Okay, so we're just working on page 23, just the bottom part here. And I also handed out your review sheets. We're gonna do kind of both at the same time. So when we get to a question or a couple of questions, I'm gonna stop you and say, okay, what did you need to know to answer those questions? And then we're gonna come over here and put them on the review sheet. Does that make sense? All right, so let's try. Again, we started right here in question 1. What was the latitude of the equator? 0 degrees. What's located at 0 degrees? Latitude, that's the equator. Do you see, guys, how those two questions were practically the same question, just worded differently? I'm showing you the different ways you can be asked the same question. And then what's the highest degree north latitude on the entire globe? 90. 90 degrees north. And then what's the highest degree south? 90 degrees south. Now here, this wasn't part of it, but what's the name of 90 degrees north? North Pole. What's the name of 90 degrees south? South Pole. So let's add some of that stuff to our reference table or our review sheet. You won't have your packet to look back at tomorrow. So what is one thing you're going to need to know about latitude? Off the top of your head, what was one thing? 0 degrees equals the equator. And then 90 degrees north and 90 degrees south, North Pole and South Pole. These are the highest latitude. Everybody got that on their review sheet? All right, back to the questions. What's the highest degree longitude? 180. And what's the name of that place? No. That's the international date line. I didn't even ask you about the prime meridian on the questions, but let's go back to our review sheet. I'm going to now do longitude on the other side over here. No, because we're moving to a different topic. Each box is for its own topic. So for longitude, same idea, 0 degrees. What's the name of 0 degrees? That's the prime meridian. I did not ask you that on the questions, but you will need to know it for tomorrow. And then I did ask you about 180. That's the highest, and that's the international date line. Sorry, camera's crooked. It's messing with me. All right, ready to go back to the questions? Everybody got these 2 boxes filled in on their review sheet? Okay. Which way do the latitude lines run? You can word this a couple of different ways. What's one way you said? Latitude lines, which way? Okay, I'm not going to write east and west because that messes with people's heads. If you get it, you can go with it. Okay. I'm going to suggest crossing off the east to west because it messes with people's heads. Side to side, another name for that is horizontal. Oh, thanks, Ms. Free. Side to side or horizontal?
If we put side to side on the regions, would they count it?
100%. The reason I don't like east and west is because, guys, what does latitude measure? Measures north or south. It tells you how far north or south of the equator you are. So I don't even bring up that latitude lines go from the east side to the west side because that messes with your head. They measure how far north or south. Hey, as long as we're at it, I think those are two things that have to go on your review sheet. So I'm going to pick a new box for another latitude set of notes. Cole, why don't you do it the way I have it? Okay, because they're two separate concepts. We're not going to run out of boxes, I promise. So another box for latitude is that they go, you can either write horizontal or side to side, whatever words you like better. You don't need to include both. I am going to draw what that looks like though. Oh, one other thing. You should know that they're parallel. And then I'm going to draw what they look like. They look like flat lines across. I'm also going to add one more bullet that they measure how far north or south of the equator. Nope, that's not your bell. Back to the questions. Which way to longitude go? Vertical or up and down, same deal. I don't like the words north and south because remember, longitude measure how far east or west of the prime meridian you are. You're not wrong by saying north and south, but it messes with people's heads. That's the next thing I'm going to add right to the review sheet. So another box for longitude. They go up and down, which also means vertical. Are our longitude lines parallel? Why not? Yep, they meet at poles. And they measure how far east or west of the prime meridian. Sorry, I had to squeeze meridian in there. How about name the city at 42 degrees north and 75 degrees, 55 minutes west. So when I was helping people, I asked, is 6 minutes a lot of minutes after 42? No, 6 minutes is not very many minutes after 42. I still recommend putting your ruler on the 42. And then remember, 6 minutes is not a lot. So you're just going to go up just a little bit. There's quite a few cities just a little bit above 42. There's Jamestown, Elmira, Binghamton, and over here, Slide Mount too. So there's a lot. We can't just go by that. Now we need 76 degrees, 55 minutes west. And now I ask you, is 55 minutes a lot of minutes after 76 or 75?
No.
It is. How many is 55 minutes a lot of minutes after noon? Isn't it almost all of them? Yeah. So it's going to be right before 76. That's how I like to think of it. So here's 75, and we're going to go a lot of minutes. In fact, we're going to go to almost 76, and it puts you right there on Binghamton, because remember, we were just a little bit above 42 and almost all the way to 76. So that's Binghamton. And a bunch of you struggle with number 10 because you forgot what I made you say yesterday over and over again. Guys, what do we know about Polaris? Altitude of Polaris. Okay, that was kind of good, but let's try it again. Altitude of Polaris equals your latitude. I'll give you one more shot at this. Altitude of Polaris equals latitude. So guys, whatever happens to Polaris happens to your latitude. Let me rephrase that. Whatever Polaris is your latitude. Whatever your latitude is Polaris. So right up here, 41 degrees to Polaris. So what else do you know? If 41's Polaris, 41's the latitude. Now, but it says name the city. So you got to use your reference table. So you find 41. There's actually two. You could have put New York City, it's almost 41, or Riverhead right here, it's almost 41. Those are the only two choices though.
A good trick, by the way, the word altitude and latitude, you switch the first two letters of altitude and you get the word latitude.
Yep, I love it. I say that all the time as well. So what is Mr. D saying? He, in fact, review sheet on the latitude side. So you could spell it out. Altitude of Polaris equals your latitude. That's a lot to write, but I think you should write it at least once. But what Mr. D was just saying, I'll wait till you guys are done writing that. Right here, alt, A-L-T. So the A-L-T of altitude. And look at that, the L-A-T of latitude. See, it doesn't work with alt equals long. That doesn't make any sense. Those aren't the right letters. But alt equals lat, they're the same letters. So you don't even really have to think. Altitude of Polaris equals your latitude. So whatever your altitude is your latitude. Same way, whatever your latitude is altitude of Polaris. And then for the next two, oh, we're not there yet. Hang on. So name two cities located approximately the same latitude as Binghamton. So we just found Binghamton. That was down here. Which way is latitude? Show me with your hands, everyone. Latitude, latitude. So Binghamton's right there. The two that are almost exactly the same are Elmira and Jamestown over here. Tomorrow you can have two rulers if you want two rulers. You can also do it with your pen. Latitude, latitude. But the next question asks which one's the same longitude as Ithaca. Ithaca's right there. Longitude, up and down. Oswego. That's Oswego. I have heard it pronounced slightly other ways. What is it? It's just north of Syracuse. So here's Syracuse. You go north a little bit, not too much. I don't think it's even, have you done that trip? Yeah, I got it. Here, these next two are what I was trying to get ahead of myself a second ago. So we already know altitude of Polaris equals your latitude. But on the same idea, whatever happens to Polaris, so if it gets higher in the sky, whatever happens to Polaris happens to your latitude. So if Polaris gets higher, your latitude gets higher. And same way, the reverse of that, whatever Polaris does, or if your latitude gets higher, then Polaris gets higher. If Polaris gets higher, your latitude gets higher. Whatever happens to Polaris happens to your latitude. So let's try this out. Oh, I actually got ahead of myself. An observer, they know the altitude of Polaris. What else do they know?
Latitude.
Latitude. And if we travel due north, remember we learned this yesterday, due north means straight north. So what changes when we travel straight north? Latitude does. So you could think of this two ways. You could think to yourself, what's the latitude of the equator? 0. What's the latitude of the North Pole? 90. So when we go from the equator to the North Pole, we go from 0 to 90. That's your latitude. Whatever happens to your latitude happens to Polaris. So if your latitude goes from 0 to 90, what's Polaris gonna do? 0 to 90, which, what's a word from going to 0 to 90 we could use? Goes up. Anything that means goes up, gets bigger, increases, goes up is fine. Due west, what happens to your latitude? So when you go due west, latitude stays the same. Whatever happens to latitude happens to Polaris. What landscape region is at 4330? So here's 4330 right there. And 75, that's right there. So we're kind of in the middle of this like section of New York State right there. Right there, Adirondack Mountains. And then, yes, for sake of time, this is Lake Ontario. And this last one is north. Guys, I have one more thing to put on your review sheet. We have a few minutes, so grab this. The one thing I know I forgot on the questions, but I know is on the test tomorrow for longitude. Same longitude. What do you guys know happens if we're on the same line of longitude? What else is the same? Same time. Speaking of time zones, how far apart are they? 15 degrees apart. Speaking of, no, we're not done. Speaking of time zone, if we go east, do we get earlier or later in the day? East is towards London, later. And then if we go west, it's earlier. And guys, we don't have too much time to write this down, but there were 3 spheres. Hydrosphere. What's a hydrosphere made out of? Water. Lithosphere. Rocks. And the last one is atmosphere. That's air. And please remember, ESRT page 1 shows what each of those layers is made out of. That will be on the test tomorrow. I will keep that up there, yep. If anybody didn't get a chance to finish it and wants to take a picture of mine, you can. Thanks, guys.